Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan. Monday, April 28th. That means the NFL draft has come and gone. And before we even get any further into this pod, Adam, I just want to thank all of the people involved in Inside the Birds pre-draft coverage. That includes yourself, obviously, did a great job with your intel that you've got. Andrew DeCecco with his DeCecco Dailies, his Day 3 podcast that he did with us on Sunday. He was just on top of every single prospect. We got to give Sam Finkel his props from the analytics standpoint, doing every single position analytically. Greg Cosell breaking down all the tape. Samir Suleiman, John DiFilippo joining us on Patreon Chalk Talks. I don't know. I don't think I know this. Here's what I do know. Nobody else in this area who covers the Eagles had the depth and breadth of pre-draft coverage from an Eagles and NFL standpoint the way we did, from prospects to scouting to front office to coaching to visits to and then expert opinions. I don't know if you could have done better. So I know people are like, oh, why don't you pat yourself on the back? Well, I'm going to. I think we offered our listeners and our viewers every possible angle available to break down the draft. So it's been a long month, but it's been very, very productive and good for us.
No, we appreciate the support. Yeah, we appreciate the comments, and yeah, we got involved. We chime in on the YouTube section when we can, and man, people are like, it's really funny just to see that the comments of people are fired up. Either it's a super positive or, oh man, what was Howie doing? It's typical of any draft.
Right.
People want answers and they feel passionate about it either way. That's fine. Hey, we love that. It's all good. Yep. And to our Patreon group, man, I got to tell you, that group continues to grow. And if someday we got to be able to get people together, because everybody's getting to know each other. It's really cool from all parts of the country. In fact, most of them, I would say, don't live in the Philadelphia area. Only like a couple of them that we've seen.
Right. Yeah, you get people from all around the country and internationally. Yeah. We've got people overseas and in
Phil and Ireland, right? Is it Phil if you're watching? Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, no, it's a really fun experience. And we have one more Ask Greg Cosell left this week for them, Tuesday night, 6:30, and that'll be Greg's breakdown and recap of the Eagles picks, and which is always one of our more popular things every year. They get to ask him directly what he thinks, and he answers them directly. We're all in a live chat room together. It's really fun. And then, of course, we'll have our Ask ITB on Wednesday, 8 p.m. We've got Discord, all this stuff available to you at patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. Take advantage of all the great extra bonus content that we're doing. In this episode, we're going to start a two-part series. We are going to now look with the draft over at the Eagles depth chart and talk about offense, defense. We're going to go through what the Eagles depth chart looks like right now with the newcomers in, which will also prelude or be a prelude to some of the battles that we'll see in training camp, Adam, and it's going to be fun. In this episode, we will do offense, which was addressed not as much as defense in the draft, but there were some really key additions, and we'll talk about where they fit and how this offensive depth chart looks.
Yeah, and just for people looking for UDFA stuff, we don't talk about that till they're official. We don't want to pick on anybody, but as Samir Suleiman, the former Panthers contract negotiator, explained to us on Patreon last week, typically every year, one or two agents back out. Or then I'm not talking about the Eagles here, but this is an unbelievable story where Samir told the story on Patreon last week where there was a time when they overspent their budget for UDFAs, and they had to tell the player or the agent, "Listen, we just can't do this," and it's not fun. It's not fun. I know of a very popular agent who got in a shouting match with a GM when the club backed out, and what the player said, the agent told me, is that it's humiliating when you tell a player that they're going somewhere, and then you have to call them back and say, "Sorry, you're not going there because they ran out of UDFA money to sign these guys." So we just have a policy which we've had for 8 years, and it's not going to change. We wait till they're actually signed, and it will be later this week. It'll be either this show or the next show, the show coming up or the show after that. And also it helps us gather information, and we have really cool stuff that we get from we talk to scouting directors from around the league, GMs, whoever. coaches who scouted these players. It's interesting. So we'll have that for you later this week.
Yeah. My favorite Samir story along those same lines, Adam, was when he talked about how it's such a crazy market where you're just signing and calling players that he said sometimes you accidentally sign, like you're targeting a few players and you want at least one, and you accidentally agree to terms with all like 2 or 3 guys when you only wanted 1 or 2, and you got to honor it because you're agreed to terms.
Oh, that's bad.
To get them, so you get like 4 guys. You get like 4 running backs. You're like, what the heck do we need 4 additional?
Well, what happens is What happens is so they split it up. The chief contract negotiator and the scouts and the scouting director. The GM typically tries to stay out of it because he's already tired enough. He doesn't need to deal with this nonsense. So it gets hot and heavy, and you rely on your relationship with agents. It's very important because if there's a guy you really want and you're tapped and you're offering a little bit less than the other team, you rely on your relationship with that agent. It's very key sometimes because it's why it's very important that the general manager and personnel director get along with agents, because if you don't have a good relationship, ties do not go to the runner; they go to the other team. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, 100%. So that's those stories that Samir gave us, and that's what it's like, and that's why we don't really talk about these things until the Eagles release the information themselves. So, and obviously those guys will factor in when they're signed a little bit to the chart, but not like the guys that they drafted here, where we can really talk about what the top 2 or 3 and 4 look like at each position. So why don't we start that? We'll go with offense, and of course, we'll start at quarterback, the most important position. There was one added through the draft, Kyle McCord from the 6th round out of Syracuse. So he comes in, and that gives the Eagles 4 quarterbacks. Now, I have said in the past, Adam, no team carries 4 quarterbacks, but the Eagles for about a half a year last year made a fool out of me because they kept Will Grier on like the practice squad, whatever. They were carrying 4 because they had Hurts, Pickett, they had McKee, and they had Will Grier on the was he on the 53 or practice squad? He was
practice squad. Yeah, practice squad.
Yeah, which is still unusual because we talk about reps and what's available and who knows what's going to happen here. But for the moment, the Eagles have 4 quarterbacks. Hurts, McKee is now your number 2 unless he falls on his face or something in camp. And now it becomes a battle, right, between DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and Kyle McCoy, the draft pick. 2 completely different kind of quarterbacks.
Yeah, that room's going to be fascinating because McCord and DTR are completely different stylistically. And you got Tanner McKee, who's got the big gun. You know, he could spin it. It's a little bit older, but he's got great size. See, the thing is, though, now with another new play caller, you have to see how everybody fits in, how Kevin Patullo sees everybody. Yes, he's worked very closely with Hurts. This is their 5th year together. And he's worked very much with Tanner McKee, and he's new to Thompson Robinson and McCord. So it's an interesting room, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what this looks like once we get to OTAs, once they're able to practice in May. Because in phase 1, there's no practice. It's strength and conditioning. Coaches are not allowed to work with them. They could, you can't really do much. So it's when they get to phase 2, you see them soon. They start working in May on the field, and we'll get to see what this looks like.
Yeah, you know, it's been put out there, and I think that there's some legitimacy. You draft a guy like McCord, right, because he's available, he's a quarterback, there's some value there. Yeah. And, you know, you don't know what's going to happen with Tanner McKee a year or 2 down your road, and you don't know who's going to be your next number 2 after this year, because this will be year 3 coming up for Tanner McKee, and usually that's when you want to make a decision on a guy as far as an extension, or if he gets to plays well, and there's value, and you want to trade him, you can do that too. So it does make sense to keep adding quarterbacks and having competitions and having a nice deep depth chart. This is what the Eagles have done in the past. It has benefited them. So it makes a lot of sense. And I know people always say, why do they go and get a quarterback who runs a different offensive system? Well, you don't know what you're going to be running 3 or 4 years. You're just looking for the best available talent. Tanner McKee stepped in. They modified the offense a little bit, and you saw how well it worked when he stepped in there. So it's not like you have to totally change everything you do. You just have to change some things based on your quarterback strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, and it's the thing is, we'd said this in the fall that it's very likely that they would move either McKee or Kenny Pickett, because you had Pickett, who was going to reach the end of his rookie deal. You had McKee, who's in terms of NFL years was not as tenured, but they love McKee being behind the scenes. I mean, this has been like this love affair, kind of like Nate Sudfeld, very similarly. But McKee's, to me, McKee, I know you could look at the end of Nate Sudfeld. Oh, he wasn't very good, but you forget he was the darling of the football team at 17 behind the scenes. And we've talked to John G. Flippo about that as, John's talked about him before with us. He was a guy that the Eagles thought very highly of. And Tanner McKee's that next guy. Now, McKee is fascinating. Let's see. Now, this is 1 year that yes, he made the roster 2 years ago because of his preseason. It wasn't just the preseason last year. It was everything he did behind the scenes in practice last year. Drew Mailata couldn't even contain his enthusiasm with his quarterback. Called him the Mormon missile?
Yeah, the Mormon missile.
Right. So it's not as everybody knows. In fact, it's gotten out around the league. I've had guys ask me about what I heard who know about him. It's just kind of funny. It becomes a phenomenon where you hear about this guy that no one really liked coming out of Stanford. Oh, he can't move. He just has an arm. He's just a statue. He's not a statue, although I thought so his first year. But, man, he showed some really good mobility last year in training camp. And they, as you said, they modified that. They moved him in the pocket against the Giants. It's a pretty good performance against the Giants once in the regular season.
Yeah, that was the Eagles' backups versus the Giants' ones, and they did well. Although one could argue the Giants' ones are the equivalent to most teams' backups, but we won't get into that right now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's talk about running back. The Eagles did not add a running back in the draft. I kind of thought they would on day 3, just from a value standpoint, because there were some really interesting running backs who had good skill, like a Jadon Blue, guys who had some nifty skill sets. But where the Eagles stand right now, they didn't exactly need to replenish that position. They have a lot of names here. Now, like we talk about A.J. Dillon, the guy they signed in the offseason, he had the nerve issue with his neck. He missed all last year. Not guaranteed to make the team, but they've got a lot of names here.
Yeah, Ty Davis-Price, he's a guy they liked, another former Niners back that they've brought in over the years. Yep. Lou Nichols, who's got some power, former Packers draftee. And, Avery Williams, it might say running back on the roster sheet, but I put receiver question mark next to him because, Nick Sirianni kind of gave it away when he talked to the combine. It's very clear, owners' meetings. It's clear that they see him as something else or something in addition to running back. Could it be a slot receiver, gadget guy? There's something here that Nick cannot control his enthusiasm, which was really interesting.
Yeah, do you remember the Michigan quarterback from 8 or 9 years ago?
Yes, Robinson.
And when they drafted him, I forget who drafted him, but they listed him as OW, offensive weapon. Right? They weren't sure where they're going to play him, so they called him OW. I feel like that's for Williams.
Was he a second round pick? I remember him being overdrafted. He wasn't a second round.
They drafted him way too high. Yeah.
I hope not. I'm going to look this up because it never really worked.
Yeah. And that's the difficulty when you talk about players who just don't have natural positions. It's like the theory of using these guys as weapons is great, but then when you actually have to do it, it doesn't always work out in your favor. Was it Jacksonville that drafted him?
Yeah, it was actually a 5th round, not too bad. But yeah, he was an OW. I remember that. I just laughed my ass off. Boy, that was a long time ago. That was 2013 draft, 5th round.
Yeah.
And then he became an assistant with the Jaguars, and now he had been working at University of Michigan in player personnel. So good for Denard. But yeah, we'll see. I just when they sign him, special teams returner, you could do that. He's really good, pretty good returner and a coverage player as a gunner. So okay, but now Nick kind of let it out of the cat out of the bag. So he's another guy. Like when I go to OTAs, I'm like, I gotta watch this guy. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. So Eagles deep here in numbers, at least. Saquon Barkley, A.J. Dillon, Will Shipley. That's your top 3. And then, as you mentioned, TDP, Lou Nicholas, and Avery Williams, who, whatever he'll be, if he's on the 53, he's going to take up an offensive spot, and we'll figure out his role as it goes on. So let's go into wide receiver. Yet another position the Eagles did not address in the draft. That doesn't surprise me. I would have been even on day 3. I guess it wouldn't have shocked me if they took a wide receiver day 3, but the fact that they didn't doesn't blow me away. It doesn't shock me, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, look, they could replace Dotson's contract's up after this year, so they could look to replace him next year. They'll need a number 3 next year, but that's down the line. They didn't have to address it; it wasn't necessary.
Right.
And Terrace Marshall's a former second-round pick who's got talent, formerly of the Panthers. So he's there. Nye Smith is a slot. Danny Gray could run, another former 49er. And Elijah Cooks is a guy. I remember talking to someone with the Jaguars who would flash during like OTA practices. Then they're just, he doesn't run all that well, but he's a big body. You just take a look at him. The problem becomes, obviously, if A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, if one of them gets hurt, and you've seen what's happened when A.J. Brown doesn't play, it doesn't look very good. Not that you can obviously adequately replace him, but you like Terrace Marshall to make the team because he's got size and ability.
Right. You would like that, ideally. And then, they drafted 2 guys last year who, one of them they got on the field in Johnny Wilson. I think they would like to have gotten Ainias Smith a little bit more time on the field last year, but he had a slow start in training camp. He was dropping balls and an injury. You have a feeling year 2 here for Ainias Smith, they're hoping to see a little bit more. And then even when you get far down to like number 7, Danny Gray may have the second best speed on the team behind AJ Brown. He might be the fastest player.
Yeah.
If they all ran a 40 along the wide receivers, Danny Gray might win it out. And another 49ers hot mid-round draft pick who the Eagles are hoping to find something out of.
Yeah, so whereas you look at running back, and obviously it always depends on who's healthy. We kind of know what it's going to look like. Dillon, then Shipley, if Barkley gets hurt. So if Brown or Smith can't play, it's Dotson's the first guy up. And but I'm just curious what Terrace Marshall. I know he's bounced around a little bit, but he's a guy that's got good size that can run, and he's not a slot receiver, but can play from inside if you need him to. Mm-hmm. And he just offers you something here. So, whereas Ainias Smith, who by the way missed, obviously he was coming back from the broken foot. He missed their offseason program and parts of training camp. And you mentioned the drops. He needs to prove he's certainly no lock to make the team. He's got to prove himself. So Danny Gray's a guy. If you really want to look at it, and assuming they'll keep 5, which is what almost every NFL team does. Johnny Wilson's just there to block, unfortunately. Could he show that he could do more? Yeah, you're right. He got on the field a lot, but the block, he was, as we jokingly called him, the blocking receiver.
Yeah.
Let's see. In year 2, let's see if they can expand his role a little bit.
Yeah. There's going to be good competition at this position. We can at least say that, especially if Terrace Marshall shows up to camp, like the point you're making, we know he has the talent. If he shows up completely determined to do whatever it takes to make a team and be better, then it's going to be pretty exciting at camp between him and Jahan and, Ainias and Johnny Wilson and all that. And Danny Gray, same thing. If Danny Gray's hell-bent on making a 53 and doing what he has to do, because all the reports were that he did a great job on the scout team. Andrew DeCecco talked to him a lot. DeCecco talked to other people about him, and they were raving about him. It's going to be exciting. It'll probably be a little bit better than last year. You got a little bit more intrigue at the bottom of the roster because last year Devontae Parker retired, and then there was nothing really that exciting about Paris Campbell and then the Bengals guy, who was the first round, John Ross. That to me was, I didn't think those guys were going to do anything. So I think that this one's a little bit more competitive and exciting.
Who had a longer or more productive Eagles career, Devontae Parker or Frank Gore? Your thoughts?
I'm going to say Devontae Parker because he was least signed.
Well, yeah, he actually signed. Yeah. This is so ridiculous. I'll never forget that one. I love when people retweet that thing in every March to me because when I was at ESPN, Schefter and I put it out. Yeah, and I remember I never said he was good. He told people what we had found out is he actually told a lot of people he was signing here. And then I never got the rumor was that he found out the way that Chip practiced. He's like, I'm not dealing with this. I'm not. It's just so funny, man. I got to tell you, and we're going to do this in June because every year people ask us, when are you going to do your story show? The Chip, was the last year you worked for Comcast Sports in 2014 or 2014, right?
2015, I think. Yeah.
Okay. 14. So you did Chip. You covered at least 2 years for Chip, correct?
Yeah, 2015. Yeah.
Okay. We got to talk. You and I got to do a Chip show. Oh, we have to. Oh my God, just the drama. Oh, it's just unbelievable. And just the excitement when he came in, and it never became what we thought it was going to be, for the record. I
Right.
cannot tell you how excited I was when they brought him in here. Oh my God, the fireworks. He does all this stuff. It was such a buzzkill. It was not what we thought we were getting from Chip,
Yes.
but the lead up, that those first practices were like, oh, this is gonna be the greatest thing. He goes fast. Yeah, he does. Then the players hated it. So anyway.
Yeah. Oh man, what a mess. All right.
Total.
Listen, you talked about fireworks. Let's hear the fireworks, pop the champagne, because the event we've been teasing, a new opening for our friends at Stretch Zone, has happened. They are now open in Warrington, their new location. Really excited for them. Joins several of their locations in the Delaware Valley and expanding. And of course, you can get your free, no obligation 30-minute stretch just by going to stretchzone.com, signing up, or walking into your nearest Stretch Zone, making an appointment. You can do it online if you want to do it. And the great part is, as we talk about all the time, they've got this system-wide access as part of your up-to-date membership. If you become a member, you can go any location. Adam even went to one in, I think, West Palm Beach, Florida. They had all his information. They knew exactly what to do. And that is the beauty of being a member at Stretch Zone. Right, Adam?
Yeah. So what happens is, right? So, like, for instance, on Sunday, I got an awesome stretch from Austin and Exton. And Austin, what's that?
I said, say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, Austin. Yeah. Austin's a great dude. He's a big fish guy. He's big doing the fly fishing. So you could talk to him about that if you go into that location near the Exton Mall. So what happens is, after I leave, he types in their computer what exactly we worked on. So because of I play tennis 4 days a week, my shoulders are always sore. So I wanted my traps done, rhomboid, my shoulder blades. I wanted that all done, and I wanted my hips and back done. So it was really an upper body stretch, because I have doubles coming up. I'm becoming more of a doubles guy. Doubles is way less stressful in your body, which I've learned, and I should have played it when I first started playing tennis. I was a singles player, and now I've done doubles, and I'm loving it. So I'm looking forward to that. So to move this forward, Geoff just talked about it. The cool thing is, when you become a member and you want to schedule, you could do it on your phone or your laptop. You don't have to go in. You don't have to call. You could just do it. It takes 30 seconds. You sign in. You have your username and password. You sign in. You pull the chart up. Wherever you are in the country, you just, you know what? I want to go here. You find the time that suits you. You know, by the way, they're open 7 days a week, except for holidays. And they generally open up. Most of them open up at 7 a.m. I've gone in there when I've had a tennis match at like 9 a.m. I've gone in there at 7 a.m. And they're there. So 7 a.m. till 8 o'clock at night, no matter where you are in the country.
There you go. Our great friends at Stretch Zone. Go give them a visit. Again, get your free, no obligation 30-minute stretch to start off, and then go from there. All right, let's talk now, as we continue our look at the depth chart, about tight end, another position the Eagles did not address in the draft. This one a little more surprisingly. We talked about this on I think the day 1 or day 2 recap pod. They saw the tight end class a little differently, as we understand it. You know, they felt those top 2 were really good, Warren and Colston and Loveland. They weren't going to get those guys. They did like Mason Taylor, but he went very high in the second round to the Jets, right? Mason Taylor out of LSU.
Yeah.
And after that, as we understand it, just weren't as hot, at least to try to trade up to get those guys. Because the other 2 guys went pretty much within the next 8 picks of Taylor. It was Terrence Ferguson, and who am I missing? Who was the other guy that went? Oh, Arroyo from Miami.
Yeah.
They all went really early in the second round.
Yeah. So basically, there were, as we understand, there were really 7 tight ends that club saw starters. But let me tell you something. Loveland went at 10, which floored me. Boy, that was so interesting, because they already have Cole Kmet, but they're going to play. They'll play 12 personnel, and they'll use them like the Raiders use Brock Bowers as a flex tight end, as an F tight end. But when you look at after Warren, Loveland, Arroyo, Taylor, and Ferguson, there's a major drop off. So if you're the Eagles, why would you? Harold Fannin is the problem is he had unblocked very well. He's undersized to be a tight end. The scouting people we talked to who turned grades in for the draft almost universally did not like the player. They don't know him personally, but in terms of a performer, They thought everything funneled to him in Boston at Bowling Green from Scott Loeffler, who's now the Eagles quarterbacks coach. And then Gunnar Helm was a marginal starting type of tight end. So to be honest with you, I agree with it. Why reach for a guy just because you need one? The Eagles are fine with backups. They just, if they move if they move Goddard, which they didn't do, they would need a starter. Well, Goddard's on the team. Howie's comments were fascinating. Be careful what you see in social media. There were a lot of clips taken. You need the context. You need to play the full clip. You actually need to hear it because I know, he's on the team. As Howie said, right now he's on the team. I'm not saying they're going to trade him still, but as we first reported, they gave him permission to seek a trade. They were trying to move him. It's not a secret around the league. Other reporters put it out there. They want to move his contract. They were trying to move his cash. The total cash is $15.25 million. We'll see what happens. It's to me, it's fluid how they're going to handle this situation. But let me just tell you something. There's no one out there on the free market they can get that's better than him. They're a much better team. I don't care what their record was. Oh, they're 8-1 without him. Like that's the way they're thinking. You know what? Let's not have him because we were 8-1. We'll probably be better off without him. It's just a stupid thinking.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, you were right about the full context. I think people saw what Howie said, or maybe saw a tweet from someone else about the Eagles would prefer to keep Dallas Goedert and ran with the idea that means that they're just gonna keep him. It's gonna happen, and prefer it does a lot of work, or I would like to keep Dallas Goedert. The whole I would like to does a lot of work there that you really have to understand how wordplay and GM speak go to really figure this thing out. But we'll see what happens. Like you and I have said from the beginning, we can't rule out the fact that Dallas Goedert plays out his contract with the Eagles.
Sure.
It's a possibility.
But how though? How though? That's a lot of cash which they don't want to pay.
Right. And
Dallas doesn't have leverage here because there's no guaranteed money left, and as we understand, the option bonus is not due till closer to the season. But this is the thing though. People need to understand. This is the way it works. When you don't have any guaranteed money in your contract, and it's a big number like this, typically the team tells the player to stay home until they figure out what they're going to do. It doesn't mean that they're going to trade him, but if he comes at the old joke was, and this has happened before, not with the Eagles, but the guy works out the facility and unfortunately drops a dumbbell on his chest. He tears a pec. Well, you can't have that because then you can't cut him. Not that they want to, but nobody will trade him. Right. No one will trade for him. You can't cut him. So you got to be careful with this. It's fluid on how they're going to handle it. He's definitely on the team. He's under contract, and that he's so good. It's just too bad. And the word around the league was that A, he's 30, B, the injury history, and they felt like if he wanted a new deal, which is widely believed, at least from other teams, that how could you justify it at 30 years old with his injury history? It's weird because he's so good, but yet you got to be careful because you don't want to guarantee any cash in year two. It's weird.
Right. By the way, this scenario that you just mentioned, as far as not showing up, like it happened to Zach Ertz in 2021. He didn't, that was when they were thinking about trading him to the draft. It didn't happen. Remember, Buffalo was the hot name. They needed a tight end. He didn't show up to the spring camps. And if I recall correctly, he didn't even show up for the start of training camp. He eventually did. They were very light with his load. And then they wound up trading him in the middle of the season, right? To then give Goddard the extension. So everything, you'll know everything you need to know when minicamp starts. We'll see if Dallas Goedert is there or not.
Well, no, but the thing now here's the thing though with Ertz. Was it a mutual agreement? It's so long ago, I don't remember. Did they send him home? Did they mutually?
No, I think it was a mutual. If I recall correctly, it was a mutual agreement. Yeah, because they all knew the writing was on. They knew, and Dallas Goedert and the Eagles know they're communicating, obviously. So it's not like he's going to get a call one day and be like, "Don't come to training, or don't come to."
Right. I was just saying that's how this is typically handled when you have a situation like this with no guarantee money. The number's big. It's one thing. It was $4 million. Okay, you know what? We can live with that if he comes here and gets hurt, but you can't live with it $15.25 million. That's just not tradable.
Right.
If it came to that. But it is crazy. It tells you how time flies, man. He's now 30. I mean, I remember that distinctly because they'd said, they'd told people, we had heard that they were going to extend Goddard's contract before the end of the season. I think it went up being very quickly after they traded Zach. Mm-hmm. Now here we are, but they didn't draft Goddard's replacement. So that's why it just seems so logical to keep him, figure out a way where both sides aren't mad at each other, to be respectful to to Dallas. If you're going to ask them to take less money, or you can't handle the 15 quarter, figure out something that both sides could live with. It's they've had a good relationship with Dallas. They know the agency that represents them very well. So we'll see what happens. But I expect to be pretty respectful. Howie's been very good about the way he handles players in recent years in particular.
Yes, absolutely. So Goddard, Grant Calcaterra is back. I believe this would be the final year of his 4 year.
That's right.
All right. Kylan Granson and Harrison Bryant, two guys they added on 1 year deals in free agency. Nick Muse is still there. EJ Jenkins is a guy they've been developing. And of course, Cameron Latu, yet another San Francisco 49er who has.
What is the obsession? Could you explain this? What the obsession is with the Niners?
If you can't beat them, join them. I don't know, because the Eagles keep beating the Niners, so the Niners now are joining them. So I have no idea what it is.
All right. I one little correction from a recent show. All of their tight ends contracts expire. All of them. Goddard after 25. Granson, Bryant, Muse, all in 1 year deals. Calcaterra's up after the season. He'll be unrestricted. Right. Jenkins' 2 year deal is up, and Latu signed a 1 year deal on January 10th. So that's insane. 7 contracts all expire.
Which is exactly why we said it doesn't matter if Dallas Goedert is on the roster or not. If the Eagles took a tight end this year early, it's because you're building a roster. You're building for the future.
Yeah, sure.
Tight end is much more of a future need than a right this.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Right. But I would say this: if they did trade Goddard and they don't, as is, they have great depth, but that's all they have is depth. Like Harrison Bryant, very early in his career, there was some juice. I know talking to the Browns that, wow, it was when like they knew Njoku had a big injury history, though he's talented. But now he's really he's a solid top 10 tight end. But there were some people with the Browns I spoke with who go, wow, this guy behind the scenes looks like he's a player, but it never really happened. He just never got there, so he moved on. Granson's a F tight end. He can't play in line. He's too small. He's 6'1.5". Muse, they gave a little bit of money to. Jenkins is a developmental guy, former receiver. And Latu was a draftee by the Niners, who they clearly like, and they brought him back. So it's kind of funny that 7 contracts at tight end expire after the season.
Yeah, you're right. And look, like you said about the replay, with Dallas Goedert, the Eagles can be pretty good here in 12 personnel. Without him, I don't want 2 of these other guys on the field at the same time. We know Calcaterra has issues blocking. We know that's not Granson's thing. Bryant's all right at it. It's just not the same. If Dallas Goedert's not on the team and any of these 3 or 4 are, then the Eagles have to go back to being an 11 personnel team or 11 personnel with Johnny Wilson and his blocking sort of serve. It's the 11 personnel that kind of looks like 12.
Right.
That we talked about. They used that last time. So,
not only did they, you actually said that last summer. You said that I think you said that because of their depth at tight end, they could just use him. That's exactly what they wound up doing. He served as the sort of shadow tight end. I mean, that's really what he was.
Right.
By the way, I totally forgot about this. Cameron Latu, this is another odd thing. He was a 3rd round pick of the Niners. So Ty Davis Price, Trey Sermon. Was there another one that we were missing? It was a former 3rd round.
Yes, the Danny Gray. Wasn't he a 3rd or was he a 4th?
I think he was a 4th. I'll look it up, but I think he was.
That's still a pretty high pick to just all of a sudden be on the Eagles roster.
3rd. No, you're right. Holy smokes! What? Okay, this is a weird obsession. I'm sorry. What the hell?
You gotta say it. Then John Lynch has done a bad job in the last few drafts. We'll see how this one turns out.
Yeah, I mean to cut so many 3rd rounders. I mean they've actually drafted pretty well with him and Kyle, but that's not good, man.
I feel like the first year or 2 they did, but if you go look at their last 2, not this one they just did, but 2024, 2023. You'll see a lot of that. You'll see like 4 guys that are on the Eagles practice squad right now.
It's bizarre. It's just bizarre.
Fields, don't forget about him, the corner. He was part of that.
Right now, he was definitely not an early round pick. Yeah, he was late.
No, he was a late round pick, but still
weird. Anyway, yeah.
All right. So moving on now to guard depth chart. Pretty interesting here. You got Tyler Steen entering year 3. You got Kenyon Green that they just traded for when they traded C.D. Gardner-Johnson to Texas. The Houston Texans. They have Landon Dickerson, of course, starting left guard, 3-time Pro Bowler now, and Trevor Keegan, who is a low-round draft pick last year, all competing at that guard spot.
So Steen and Kenyon Green are the right guards. Dickerson and Trevor Keegan are your left guards. Now, also as a part of that, and they really have a lot of depth. Darian Kennard could play guard because he has. Matt Pryor could play guard because he has. And Matt Pryor is really not a left tackle. He can do it. He's done it before, but he's really a right tackle guard. So they're good with depth. And in fact, Brett Toth, if you had to, could play guard. Well, we don't need to go in about what it looked like at left tackle or center, but he can do it. So look, it's pretty mapped out. I mean, it really is. Trevor Keegan, he's certainly no lock to make the team. It's Green and Steen will compete for that right guard job.
Yep.
But it's really interesting to see what happens here with this group, because Darian Kennard was the guy who played every snap of the preseason last year. Now, was that tackle he started at or guard?
Yeah, right tackle. I do wonder though, Adam, now that they've added a couple more tackles, including Pryor again, who I'm not sure will make the team, but will they practice for as long as Pryor's on the team and as long as they now have Miles Hinton and Cameron Williams? We'll get into tackle in a second. Will they move Kennard back to guard?
Well, they have that ability to do so, because when you look at, I know teams don't put depth charts together yet; it's way too early. But we know what it's good. We know what the skeleton of it looks like. It's real. Honestly, it's. See, the way we hit, well, I might as well mention this because here's what we were told on Hinton. Hinton could play right or left tackle. He's way more advanced than Cameron Williams. Cameron Williams is farther behind Hinton. Really smart guy. The issue with Hinton is the term the scouting source told me is he's passive hands, not aggressive. He lets guys get into him, where he's got to be more aggressive. Right. You know, what's interesting is this was the issue with Jordan Mailata. You might remember when he didn't understand, like, it's okay, dude. You could punch. Like, you could do that. You're allowed to do that. But Jordan didn't know that because he'd never played football before. So what we were told is the scouts, part of why he dropped to the 6, despite his pedigree and where he played and that he could play 2 positions, is that you need to be a little bit more aggressive. Where Cameron Williams is all about the athletic numbers, more about it's just the traits of the hand size, which is ridiculous, the length. There's a lot of talent in him, but he only did it for 1 year, and there's other stuff going on with him. He's just got to be better. Nothing off the field. It's just as a football player, he's got to bring it more. He's a
little kick in the ass is the way.
Yes, yeah. The term is low burn. It's a scouting term. It's when guys don't bring enough energy. They need to mature a little bit. But you know what? He's got the best in the business here with Jeff Statler. We'll see what happens. So let
me rephrase this, because we know in training camp or OTAs you have your first team, your second team, but there's usually like a third and a fourth team because you have such a big roster, right? Let's hypothetically say first team comes out on the offensive line. You know, Landon Dickerson's going to be a left guard. You know, let's say Tyler Steen's the first string right guard.
Yeah.
So second team would be right now Trevor Keegan left guard, Kenyon Green right guard. There is no third. Like, who's the third? I think Kennard would probably be guard, and maybe even Matt Pryor when they're putting together a third string.
Flip-flop them, because both could play guard and both could play right tackle. So it's however, and they may do that. They may rotate both guys with the third team. And by the way, in OTAs, once the coaches are allowed to get their hands on the players, this is what happens. You start seeing these really odd combinations. You go, we'll probably never see this again. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do in training camp.
Right.
So yeah, they've got some depth here potentially. It depends on how these guys do. Miles Hinton is a guy long term. Andrew brought up a good point, though. It's more for the long term. Miles Hinton has a real shot if he shows up over time to be the long term swing tackle. Where Kendall Lamb now is that guy. He can back up left or right tackle. Forgot to mention him. Kendall Lamb can back up right or left tackle. He's head starts there. That's why he's here. He is the 6th lineman right now. Brett Toth is there. He could play right tackle, left tackle, center. So the cool thing is, and this is obviously a necessity from what Stout wants, he wants guys who could play multiple positions. Just about, honestly, Dickerson could play center. I mean, not that they would ever do it, but Lane could play left tackle if he needed him to, because that's what he was drafted for. And we know what happened. He moved to right tackle. Pryor could play multiple positions. Kennard can. Cameron Williams will not, as from what we understand, unless they stay in. Right now, they're not. They don't plan for him to play left tackle, but that's where that's at. Keegan right now is a left guard, who they made cross-train to play right guard. Steen, we know, could play tackle, but he's a right guard. Kenyon Green is a right guard.
Yep.
But most of these guys, to finish us off, and we'll get to center in a second, have multiple positions.
Yeah, which is good, and that's what the Eagles always look for. And it'll be an interesting mix and match as they get to those third and fourth strings at OTAs and early in training camp. We're going to finish off with center, but before we do that, our great viewers and listeners absolutely need to hear a word from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop in at Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, please be sure to tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal on top of the best customer service and car shopping experience of your life. If you can't make it in, that's okay. The website is great. It shows you all the great inventory that they have at SkyMotorCars.com. And trust me, folks, whether you're buying or trading in, selling car, anything like that, it is a full, comprehensive, wonderful car shopping experience. Take our word for it. Our friends at SkyMotorCars.com. I believe our friend Brett Schiller is already working. He's getting ready, I think, with the first round pick for the Eagles, Mr. Campbell, right? I saw
that. Yeah. Are they giving away football or what are they giving away?
They were doing some promotion with it. So
yeah, it's great. Wow. Brett's had relationships with Eagles players for years. Avante Maddox, I know he's known Avante for a number of years. I remember Paul Reed bought a car there. You'll see former players. I know he goes back with Sheldon Brown many years, and a lot of athletes do. I remember he sold cars to guys who play for the Ravens. Marcus Peters, when he's with the Ravens, he ships cars across the country. Go to SkyMotorCars.com. You can see the entire inventory online. It's pretty cool.
If you go to their Instagram at Sky Motor Cars and like the photo of Jihad Campbell, did I pronounce it Jihad Campbell or Jihad?
Jihad. No, it's Jihad.
Jihad Campbell autograph photo giveaway. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it here. All right, this picture. If you like that and tag a friend, you can tag up to 10 of them. You do that, you enter a chance to win the autographed photo giveaway.
Cool.
I'm just going to call him Mr. Campbell so I don't get in trouble anymore.
It's Jihad. It's Jihad.
Yeah, Jihad Campbell. All right. Great stuff there. Let's finish out this depth chart at center. Probably a year ago, we were talking Cam Jurgens center, and then the kid that they drafted, Dylan McMahon, out of – where did they draft Dylan McMahon out of?
NC State, yeah, the fullback who was a center. That was the running joke that Andrew and I had. But anyway.
Yeah, but obviously he's with the Rams now. So once again, they find themselves looking for the backup center. So they take a shot here in day 3 on Drew Kendall in the 5th round, son of former NFL player Pete Kendall. And I would say Drew, if he's a good player, has a good chance to make the 53 because I don't think the Eagles want Landon Dickerson sliding over and having to play that center spot anymore. We know that when the Eagles have the depth that they want, Adam, that they don't want to move if there's an injury on the offensive line, they don't want to make 2 guys have to move. They would rather just put in a guy who they trust as a backup. They couldn't do that last year. They had Nick Gates, but they didn't want to play him. So hopefully for them, for their sake, they get something out of Drew Kendall and he can make the team as the backup center.
Yeah. And Brett Toth can play center. So that's their emergency to the emergency
guy.
And I know Trevor Keegan, maybe they cross train him. I would say this: if it doesn't work out with Kendall, if it doesn't look like they'll sign a veteran because they're guys out in the street that could sign. But Kendall's got a shot. I mean, now remember with Jurgens coming back from back surgery, I know Cam said he's doing really well with it. We'll have to see when exactly. I know he's supposed to be ready by training camp, but in OTAs, once the coach is allowed to work with him, you would think Kendall's going to get it work with not only the 2s, he may get work with the 1s. Who knows? So that'll be fascinating actually to see who gets work with the 1s. It could be Toth. Who knows?
I would be shocked if the Eagles didn't actually add the veteran center way before the start.
They should. Yeah, they should.
Yeah, that's what they did last year. It wasn't Gates. I think the first guy, or maybe it was, but then they signed Max Sharping too.
Yeah.
I mean, they felt they needed at least 4 guys who could snap the ball. Again, when you have the huge rosters, you have 4 strings of teams. You need guys who can snap the ball and play that position. So right now, Cam Jurgens is 1, Drew Kendall's 1, and of course they can use Brett Toth as a second or a third string, but they'll probably need 1 more, because if any of those guys get hurt, then you're in trouble. So yeah, they definitely need a veteran center.
Yeah, I'm looking to see who's out there, and this guy could play center or guard. Let me see if he's still out there. Cody Whitehair. Yeah, Cody Whitehair. He's been a good player over the years. He's a little smaller.
Yep.
I think he's still out there. Yeah, that's a guy that's out there who could play both positions.
Yeah, I think he started off with the Bears. I think they drafted him mid-round out of Kansas State, if I'm not mistaken. You know, he was a starter for them.
He's a center guard. Yeah, he started for the Raiders. Yeah, he's a veteran. He's in his 30s. So that'd be a nice signing for a depth guy. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. But this roster is so young. You know, overall, it's interesting. I don't to end this thing. I don't have a problem with him not drafting a tight end, because man, it was not a good group. It was better. It had better depth than last year, but again, the tiers of depth are different. I mean, you got your starters, no question, or starters. Then there's a drop off, so you have to understand that. The competition in training camp for backup spots on the offensive line will be really good.
Yep.
And we'll see about Darian Kennard. Darian Kennard has shown some things. That's why he's still here. And the big one is going to be right guard. That's the one. This is it for Tyler Steen. I know he's got 2 years left, but Kenyon Green is the guy the Eagles have always liked. So that's a battle for in training camp, and obviously in OTAs it starts.
All right, great stuff. Next episode, we'll do the defensive depth chart, and that obviously is going to look a lot different now with a lot of the additions made through the draft. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.